Thanks, Casey, for that really interesting commentary. You raised many interesting points. One of them is this whole question of what what's the ultimate status of statements by the people with whom, for example, anthropologists work. I'm sometimes reminded of Wyatt McGaffey's famous claim that there are two rules of anthropology. Rule number one is take everything the natives say extremely seriously, and rule number two is don't believe a word of it. Uh, and it does seem an interesting challenge, especially for phenomenologically informed anthropology. Is there a way of taking seriously, as it were, native statements about, for example, the meanings of flags and so forth, and yet still understanding the sort of unconscious penumbra that swirls around certain kinds of acts? So, in a foregrounded sense, indeed, clearly it's a sense of there's a sense of loss, a sense of imprisonment under the conditions of the so-called war on terror that may motivate certain soldiers, or at least their officers, to order certain soldiers to treat flags in certain ways, to raise certain flags. Uh, but does that mean does that rule out the possibility that in other ways people are in fact signaling and constituting the conditions of their own ultimate imprisonment? This doesn't necessarily mean that one subscribes to a false consciousness position, perhaps, uh, as if people are really just sort of unconsciously enacting the interest of power. I would never want to go that kind of reductive route. But there may be ways in which people, nonetheless, in the very pursuit agentively of their own interest, even with a degree of critical consciousness, nonetheless ultimately tend towards the reproduction of structures of power and even of oppression. And I have a sense such things are going on at the bases around Guantanamo Bay, among many, many other places. I certainly agree with you, by the way, on the technical questions. I think that was my very first ever visual essay, and I think you're right. We need to figure out ways of complicating the way image and text move around or juxtaposed and so forth. The question about conclusion is so interesting. I don't know, honestly, the degree of closure one should strive for. Are we trying to produce sort of fully formed analytic interpretive pieces? Are we simply posing difficult queries? Uh, do we even make it clear when we're stopping? But I agree, there needs to be some kind of frame saying, well, this question or this intervention is closed for the moment, but in a way that opens up new possibilities for dialogue. That seems to be some of the challenge that in these discussions. But thanks again for that very thought-provoking commentary.